Hi guys, welcome to Deer Blind 2.0. This is a video about a deer blind I built 8 years ago. It's located down in south central Texas in a little town called Hebronville, and the blind has worked exceptionally well. There are, however, a few design flaws that I'd like to address. So brought it back to the barn, and we're going to see what we can do to address some of those flaws. So first I'd like to give you a quick tour of the blind, what works, what doesn't work, and let you see for yourself. So what really works on this blind is the size. It's 4.5 feet by 6 feet long and 6 feet at the lowest point on the roof line. It tapers up an additional 3 inches to give me just a little bit of a slope to the roof. 4.5 by 6 feet provides easily enough room for 2 hunters comfortably, and potentially 3 if you really need it to fit. We have some pretty comfortable chairs that we put inside here, and office chairs that you can raise and lower, and 4.5 feet seems to be a great size. The downside on 4.5 feet wide is that you don't get optimal use out of a single sheet of plywood or any type of sheet material. It usually takes a little bit more to cover the blind. Let's take a look at some of the other materials that we built the blind out of. The entire blind was welded out of square tubing, 1-inch, 16 gauge square tubing. And it's a great material to work with. The chop saw and the MIG welder make quick work of putting it together. And it comes out pretty well and has really stood the test of time down in the South Texas elements. One of the things that I really like is the door. The door has got just enough height to it to be able to kind of duck your head and walk through. It's not a porthole or cubby that you have to crawl through, and so this makes it easy to get in and out of the blind. On the outside of the blind here, we've got a platform, a large platform, and the entire platform and the base of the blind is manufactured out of 6-inch round post framed out in 2x6 with 2x6 slats across the top. If you're familiar with putting decking on, even if you butt that deck boards right up to each other, they shrink up. So what I've done is put a 3/4 inch plywood on top of that to serve as the floor. So I've got a solid floor down at the base, and on top of that I put just some indoor-outdoor carpet, and don't tack it down. I want to be able to pull it out and shake it off as necessary. Back to the door, one of the design elements here that I'd like to try to address is, number one, take some of the stress off the hinges, because as you'll see, this door swings through. So the easy thing to do is simply put a backstop here and then perhaps a barrel latch here. On occasion, the wind will catch it and kind of swing it back and forth. So I'd like to be able to lock that down to prevent that. Another area that I'd like to address, but I'm not quite sure how yet, is this gap around here. Now when I'm covered with the old material that I had covered, I could simply cut the material larger to have it overlap, but the new material I'm going to be using is going to make that a little bit more challenging. So I need to find a way to close this gap up between the door and the frame of the blind. Go down to the base here. On the base actually bolts down in all the way through that 3/4 inch plywood, through the decking, main decking boards, using just some lag screws, and I've got those located about every 18 inches around. Once this blind is situated, it doesn't move at all, and the bolts merely just kind of keep it in place. Moving into the blind, another design element that really works is the windows. I've got one window open here, and what I've done is I've framed the windows out in the same 1x square tubing and framed them up and welded these hinges on. And the way that the window works is it folds out, and then these rods are made out of 3/8 inch round stock that I've bent on a vise and then put through a small barrel, welded that barrel onto the 1x, and then welded a washer on the top, so creates a little bit of a hinge. The window swings out. Excuse the camera work, guys. The arm folds out and then they prop open. What that provides is a very good view all the way around, almost 360-degree view of the surroundings. Now the downside to that is that you can see the deer, but the deer can see you, or certainly any movement inside the blind. We tried to remedy that with, I welded some of these washers up here, and the idea was to stick a bungee cord between the washers here and here, and drape a curtain, a mesh camo curtain across the between the bungee. The problem with that is I didn't have any attachment to the bottom of the curtain, so it was actually ended up spooking the deer by flapping in the wind. Tried some weight, putting some weight at the bottom of the curtain, but it just never worked very well. So we abandoned that after the first year. The easiest solution is to simply weld some more washers down here at the bottom, attach another bungee, and hold that window taut. Each one of these windows would have anywhere between 2 or 3 panels that we would put on here, and those panels, individual panels, would allow you to slide that curtain back and forth to be able to get optimal visibility out of the blind without the deer spooking the deer or the deer seeing you. One of the things we occasionally run into is a little bit of cold weather, and when it's cold, we'd like to be able to kind of close this window off a little bit more than what it is currently. Now, there's a couple different solutions to do that. One is to install pre-manufactured or custom-made deer blind windows. And for this blind to cover the entire blind, it's about $600 for custom windows. An expensive option, but still an option as far as trying to remedy. I expect this deer blind to last quite a while, and we've had great luck out of this blind as to where it's situated. So making a kind of a small investment on the windows may not be such a bad idea. The downside, in my mind, is that you would lose perhaps some of the visibility out of the windows. So I'm still looking at some options. Let's take a look at why we brought this blind back in the first place. The original material that the blind was made out of was this 3/8 inch plywood. On the plywood, we had a primer coat and 2 finish coats, and you can see down in that South Texas sun and the elements what it does to the material. This is probably one of the better looking panels that we had on the blind before we pulled it back. Obviously, this isn't a solution going forward. It worked well for about 6 of the 8 years, and then panels started falling off. The solution going forward, I think we need to find something a little bit more durable, and so to that end, we're going to go with a sheet material, very similar to this. This isn't it exactly, but it's a galvanized material that has a zinc phosphate coating on it. It's also called bonderized metal. That bonderized process allows you to paint it, where a galvanized material you can't prime and paint. Bonderized material you can. Now, the sheet material comes in 4x10 sheets. It's about $40 a sheet, and it's going to take about 5 sheets to cover this, depending on if I cover the windows or not. The material is 22 gauge, so about very similar to what this piece is, and I needed some more cross braces, some more attachment points. So what I've come back and done is actually put these every centerpiece all the way around. So you can see there's one, there's 2 on that side and 1 on that side. I've also put them up here around the top of the blind. So this used to be completely open. With just a single sheet of 3/8 inch plywood, it worked well. But with a 22 gauge sheet metal, it would flex or pop in the wind. So what I needed to do is create some additional attachment points. So you can see I welded, tack, and finish welded terribly on these. My motto is, if you don't know how to weld, you better know how to grind. It looks pretty awful, but anyway, it'll do the job. And we're also, this is one that's not been finish welded yet. I'm just dry fitting these pieces in here. So I'll put them around the windows, but I'm still waiting to decide if I'm going to change out the windows or not. So that's what we're going to do to solve the outside of the blind. Let's take a look and see what we did for the shelving. I just built these little brackets in here, again out of that 1x, really easy to work with. Drilled some holes through, and then mounted on here 1x6. And that 1x6, I've got a sheet of it right over here. Quick walk. This is the 1x6, and what I've done is just covered it in indoor-outdoor carpet, and using a staple gun, stapled it up and then just bolted it down. And for the most part, this has really worked well, but in taking a look at some other designs, identified that they've got a synthetic deck board that might serve better in this location. It's easier to clean, it doesn't collect all the dust that the carpet does, and would be easy to wipe down. The only other thing I'd really like to add to this blind is some shelving, or if you've ever hunted down in South Texas, you're well aware that wasps, bees, and occasionally a very mean owl come into your blind. And so to keep those out, a lot of times you'll have a can of spray or a roll of paper towels in the blind. And so we need some type of a shelf unit up here. And the easiest thing to do is just put a piece of angle, 1.5 angle iron between here and the center post, or here all the way across. And what we're going to do is put a shelf attached to that, and just a place to stick stuff up and out of the way. I do have one shelf that's located in here down below the sight line, and this is a great location to be able to put your rangefinder, bottle of water, or your binoculars, and you can grab onto them without spooking anything outside the blind. Other than that, I'd like a place to be able to, when you come in, we don't, backpacks and coats sometimes end up on the floor. So right above the door, where you really don't have any visibility anyway, I'm going to probably take some 3-inch round stock and just weld some hooks up here to be able to hang items off of. So the very last thing I'd like to show you is the roof. Again, this is, since it's 4.5 feet by 6 feet, and it's actually up here, we've added an additional 8 inches on either side for an overhang. You can't put a single sheet of material up at the top. It requires at least 2 sheets of material, which creates a seam at the top. And the seam has become a little bit of a problem. In 8 years, I replaced the roof twice, and then did a couple of patch jobs just to get it through a hunting season. So what I'd like to do is maybe put a 3/4 inch plywood. It's got enough bracing up there to easily support that. Use some self-tapping screws to screw that down into the material, and then put some roofing paper up there, along with a manufactured seamless roof that we can tack onto the side. Another option might be some galvanized roofing. The problem is, I mentioned before, you have a pretty strong north wind, and that wind will pick up an edge on that kind of galvanized roofing. So something we need to consider in the design. So anyway, that's a tour of the blind. We're going to give it. I've got some more welding to do, and then I'm going to give it a quick primer and a couple of finish coats just to protect the metal, and then get working on the siding materials. And I've got about 2 months before hunting starts, so better get to it. Thought you might enjoy it. I'll do another video on how the blind's coming along, and then hopefully one on as we get the blind completed. So thanks for joining, and keep an eye out for the next video. Thanks.